If you find yourself in a match situation where your opponent has the initiative, don't consider it a lost cause. With this video, I'll show you some technical and some tactical aspects of the passive game. My name is Olaf Kozolski, this is Table Tennis Technalytics. Let's go!
Allee, heeft u dat gedaan?
Nee, Luc, kijk, sorry, maar ik kan echt niet zoveel meer doen. Hè. Op een gegeven moment, die gsm is maar zo groot. Denk je dat ik dat zo mag gaan raken? Hoe zit het? Nee, hè? Ja, sorry, ik probeer het ook wel, hè? Ik probeer het. Dat is al wat je kunt vragen van mij. So hello everybody, we're here again in the Kilipong hall of my sponsor here in Antwerp. And as you see, I bought my mic, so normally the audio should be a lot better than the previous 3 videos. And today we're going to talk about the passive game. Passive game is something which is not maybe underrated, but it's something a lot of people they fear when they get into this position where they're not in the advantage in the rally. But if you play it correctly, you can still turn this narrative around in the rally. So today we'll be going over 5 more technical key points and 4 tactical key points, which hopefully would help you with your passive game. And first thing we'll be looking at is your racket and your elbow. But mainly it's about keeping your racket a little bit high and keeping your movement as short as possible. This is very important because in a passive position, you don't have as much time to prepare your swing, so you need to keep your movements a little bit shorter. And you do this by keeping your racket high, and so when you switch from forehand to backhand, you cannot drop your racket below the table. You have to keep it around this height, and also you cannot have your arm moving backwards a bit too much. Again, this is mainly for saving time. But some coaches, they tell you that you have to keep your elbow in front of you or your racket completely in front of you, and this might be helpful in practice. It's not entirely applicable in a match, because it's not a bad thing again, because practice is mainly a bit about exaggeration. Not everything in a match you will perform perfectly, so sometimes it's about overdoing something a little bit too much. And this could mean that, yeah, you could try to shorten your movement as much as possible, so that in match you will probably lengthen it still a little bit more. And once you get a good ball in the rally, or you get a little bit more time, or you want to accelerate just a little bit more, then you can give yourself the opportunity to lengthen your swing a little bit more. But for the basics, just try to be quite reactive by keeping your movements short and by keeping your racket high, and don't drop it below the table. Second thing to focus on is to not fall back or to fall forward. And this is a thing which occurs a lot when the rally is getting either a bit faster or when the rally is slowing down. And people, they're just staying at the same position, but then the error they make is, okay, the ball, it comes a bit shorter, for example. Let's say after a push ball and your opponent starts, well then oftentimes this is the time that you need to take a little step forward and then go towards the ball while keeping the same center of gravity, while not leaning forward, but just taking a small extra step. But the same thing goes with touching the ball a little bit too close to your body. This is also a risk, and we'll see in the next key point that this has some consequences about the rest of your body and about your shoulders. So it's always very important to touch the ball almost every time as far from you as you would with any other ball. So now I'm going to try to show you this from a sideway angle on how this step is to be performed. All right? I'm mainly going to focus on the backhand step in, because I mean, stepping in on a forehand block, it's quite unorthodox. Normally you would do a counter spin if the ball is quite short. So I'm just showing you the backhand for the moment, all right? So let's say I'll push half long in somebody's forehand, or half long over there. And my opponent would play a topspin diagonal into my backhand, and it would be a little bit too short for me to just be standing in my same position as I always would. Then I need to step in. Well, you cannot be too early, you cannot be too late with this step in. First of all, it needs to be with your dominant foot, so right-handers with their right foot, left-handers with their left foot, as you would basically like with a flick backhand, flick forehand. So it's quite the same principle. And as you're performing this movement, then you're stepping in. So as you go down, basically you're hitting the ball. As you're touching the ground, you're hitting the ball. Third key point is to avoid shrugging your shoulders. And again, this is mainly something about backhand, but it's also quite applicable to forehand, but it's more visible with your backhand, so that's why I'm demonstrating it with backhand mostly. So this is mainly a risk because people want to stay on top of the ball. People want to stay over the ball, and this gives them this feeling of control. But this is a mistake, because even if the ball has more rotation, or even if the ball is coming a little bit faster, then you need to stay in the same position. Being relaxed is key. So you cannot shrug your shoulders, because this makes you all tensed up. This makes you, lose control. This is such a bad thing to do, and this, to be honest, it's something I struggle with quite a lot. So try avoiding this problem by staying as relaxed as you can be, or even better, touching the ball in front of you as you should. Fourth key point now is not to close your racket too much. And I'm going to try and explain two things at the same time here, because they are quite overlapping. The mistake that a lot of people make when they want to play the ball on the table, or when they want to close the ball because of the amount of topspin that is in it, is they want to close the racket more and more and more until you're almost seeing your forehand side from the other side of the table. And this is a bad thing to do. Actually, it's quite counterintuitive on what you have to do if you want to have this curvature of the ball, if you want the ball to come down, if you want the ball to come on the table. And that is to keep your racket actually quite a lot open. And this is because it's very important with not having bad contacts of the ball falling from your rubber. And so this, with your racket open, it always gives you clean contacts, clean touches of the ball. And with that, you also have to go up. And I want to explain this in this key point here, because as we said in the last key point about the shoulders, people want to stay over the ball. Well, the original idea of wanting to stay over the ball is not so bad. But the shoulders that go with it, that is a bad idea. That's something you shouldn't do. So as you're playing, you have to not jump up, but you have to push off a little bit with your legs. And it's quite important, because for the same reason also of having these clean contacts, having enough rotation in the ball, having the ball go down. Because the mistake that people sometimes make is they go down as they're playing the shot, because they want the ball to come on the table. But again, it's quite counterintuitive. The right way to do it is a little bit counterintuitive. And that is, again, just going up with the ball as well, while you stay relaxed. This is very important. So you go up, you push off a little bit with your legs, again, to give you the power to let the ball drop again, so that it stays on the table. But you cannot shrug. You cannot cramp up with your entire body. You have to do this while staying relaxed. And the last technical key point we'll be talking about is to stay behind your ball. This is also very important, as basically everything is. First of all, let's just get something out of the way. Staying behind your ball in forehand, it doesn't mean that you have to touch the ball here. That speaks quite for itself. But of course that you touch the ball in front of you, that you don't touch it too late. But again, this is mainly backhand focused, because this is a mistake that a lot of people can make. And I'll show you in a minute from a sideway angle. But if the ball comes a little bit sharper at the end of your backhand, the mistake that people make is they're not tense enough, or maybe at least they don't have the core stability that is needed to get behind this ball. And instead what they do is they turn their hips and they touch the ball a little bit too much on the side. And this basically comes from the way you plant your foot. So as you get this ball, which comes quite a bit sharper, well, then basically the key that I give to myself, or what I tell myself to think about, is that I have to block my right hip. That's maybe not the right way to phrase it, but at least that's something which helps for me. So what you have to do here, basically it's quite simple. Instead of landing with the heel of your foot, as some people do subconsciously, because they don't really think about it. At first I also was like this, but instead you have to go down with the front of your foot. With the front of your foot, and this will, I'll show it from this side here, this will block your hip. If I were to turn now, then I cannot go any further. But instead, if I were to land on my heel and I were to turn, yeah, then my foot can turn with it as well, my hip will turn with it as well, and all of a sudden I'm going to touch this ball right here. So again, try to land, if the ball comes a little bit sharper, with the front of your foot, and this will put you behind the ball. This will stop you from turning any further.